Welcome to the St. George Secondary School. I am Roy Morris, Director of Citizen Engagement and Media Relations in the Prime Minister's Office. Before we get going, let's return. I see the Minister of Education and her Chief Education Officer are smiling. Did I say something wrong? Okay. Again, welcome to the St. George Secondary School. By way of housekeeping, over on my far right, Alex Downs and Darren Yearwood from the Prime Minister's Office, they are the ones who are going to take your notes ahead of speaking. So if you intend to speak tonight, the first thing you should do is go over to them, register with them. Once you've given a number, come back and take one of these seats in the middle here beside the microphone. This is designed so that we have order, and at the same time, so you're not standing the entire night waiting to speak. So once you come back, just take a seat. Once you've spoken, you can get up from, once you've spoken, you can move away from the mic and sit anywhere else you want in the auditorium, right? So that line of seats is strictly for people who are speaking and for those who have already gone and registered. And once you've registered, you'll be given a number, and you should know what number you are. So if you're number 7, we don't expect you to rush to the mic first. That having been said, this is St. George Speaks. It is your opportunity to interact with your MPs, with the Prime Minister, and with other members of the Cabinet, as well as senior public officers who are here to hear you, to assist you, to answer your queries, and to provide you with information generally about the functioning of your government. At the head table is Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Amor-Motley. On her right is MP Dwight Sutherland, and on her left, MP Tony Moore. With that having been said, Prime Minister, do you wish to say anything, or do you go straight into, you've just had an hour press conference, so I'm not sure if you want to speak some more before we start.
I'm not a glutton for punishment. Good evening. The floor is open to you.
So number 1, to the mic. State your name first, then continue.
Good evening. My name is Vicky Mustor. I'm from
You might have to speak into the mic because you're not there.
My name is Vicky Mustor. I'm from Erie Hill, St. George. And I am here with a couple of my neighbors. A few more people were coming, but I guess we got through too early. But the issue that I'm here to speak about mainly we have signed a petition, 204 people, and we sent a written complaint to your office and also to the Tongue and Country Department. We got no results from the Tongue and Country Department, so we have appealed to Tony Moore, who has came and looked at our issue, which is mainly the block road. The road in Erie Hill that has recently, over the last year, 2 years, almost 2 years, which has been blocked. It is a public road, well, not a public access road, dating back over 100 years old. It has all the infrastructure for Erie Hill. The majority of the transformers, wires, electrical, it has internet, everything. Even the pipes in that road are over 100 years old. And the people that have blocked it, they built a house. A house was built, which they inherited, and they discovered that they paid the land tax for that road, and thought then that they can close it off. They put up signs, no trespassing. They put up a fence, and they say the reason that they did it was because the people were complaining about their dogs. So, why this road is so important, it is mainly important to pedestrians more than vehicles. And it is the artery that is used by pedestrians from as far as Flat Rock that come through Erie Hill to Charles Road Bridge to catch the bus. And it mainly affects school children, elderly people, people who commute to and from work by using the bus. And also I've had complaints from workers in the National, what do you call it again? National Assistant Board, because Erie Hill has a large elderly population, and therefore people have to come out and help. And there's one woman that I spoke to, and she said that no one else wants to do Erie Hill because the roads are so bad. The commute now, because of that blocked road, is an extra kilometer, and the roads are lonely, they're overgrown, especially at this time of the year. And the major problem with the other road, which is over a kilometer long, that would replace that short 2-minute or 1-minute walk, has a dip where there's a pond, and another neighbor has built a fence and dammed the road, so they dammed the water course. So at this time of the year, the road is permanently full, and when it rains, I have footage I can show you. It is a pond. What actually happens? This lady is one of the people that commute through that road every morning, and at this time of the year, you have to stand up at the pond and wait on somebody passing, going to work in a motor vehicle, to stop and give you a lift across the pond. And then you could get out and continue your journey, the extra 1 kilometer along the road to get the bus. So that road is the main reason that we're here. We've complained and complained and complained. We've done everything. It is not right. It is not fair. And to top everything off is that it is in their covenants, because I went and I got the deed for the land from the registry. That road is addressed in at least two parts of that deed, and it is prohibited what they have done. That road, the deed from Carl Rayside or Tropical Egg Farm states that it was done in the 80s, and it talks about radiofusion wires and all the other utilities and blah, blah, blah. But it also says that the road is not to be blocked. It is for people to use. Back in those days, they said laden, unladen, vehicles, commuters. What they have done is absolutely illegal. I've spoken to many attorneys, and every single one said that that gate is illegal. And I cannot understand why 2 years later, I'm still having to quarrel about this. And that is all I have to say. Have a good night.
I missed the last part, so cool down, breathe again, and repeat the last minute.
I forget.
If you forget, you put me in trouble.
No, it's been 2 years, 2 years we've been fighting to get this reopened.
Okay. Well, the truth is that your MP spoke to me about it a few weeks ago.
I know.
And we've started to put things in train. But I didn't feel that I should stop you from explaining fulsomely, because I could have done that within 2 minutes of your starting. But I felt that it was important that you express yourself, because the truth is that this is not the only instance of it happening in Barbados. And we need to be conscious that people, regrettably, are taking things more and more into their own hands and doing things that they may not necessarily have the authority to do. Whether they do in this case or not, I can't pass judgment because I don't know enough about it. But I know that the MP raised the matter with me about, 4 or 5 weeks ago? Maybe my brain is a little fuzzy now, so you would appreciate. But I let her speak, and suffice it to say that one way or the other, we are committed to giving you access. Whether that is going to be having, and the Attorney General, in fairness, is on his way. Cabinet finished I had to go back into cabinet after the press conference, which is where you see most of these people and myself in the same clothes. So the AG is on his way, but I want to give him the option. It will either be the AG or the Minister of Housing Act, and one of the two. So worst case scenario, we will deal with it through him. Best case scenario, possibly through the AG. My problem with going through the AG is that I don't want to put you in a court system to overburden it, and it may end up being the Minister of Housing as the MP has requested, but I'll let her talk.
Hello? Yes, and thanks, Vicky, for coming forward and explaining, and I guess that was for the purpose of clarity for everyone as to the situation. Isn't really much for me to add because my professional judgment always informs that I don't say or do things to influence the situation especially when it puts me out of my area of competence. The law in this case, but what I did commit to you, the residents, is that not that I would get it fixed. There are higher than myself that can say things like that. But what I did commit is that examine it carefully with the Tongue and Country. I know that you said that Tongue and Country didn't respond, but part of what the findings we had, the team from the executive branch that went and visited with the residents, there was information that you produced was passed on to Tongue and Country at the time, the deed and so on. So now that we are in a position of fuller information, and that's following the interaction, I'm sure that all parties that have responsibility will do whatever they have to. And you would hear that the mention was made of 2 years that they have been fighting it. And no doubt you would have seen, for those who might have been following in the newspapers, that there was a previous comment that would suggest that the MP wasn't doing anything. But even in the union system, and I explained this to the residents as well, if you come for help and then you go pursuing matters legally, there's something say know your place. So I will stand back and let the law do what the law has to do. But once we recognize that there was some effort to get resolution, minus having the issue swamped within the legal system, then that is where at the level of the constituency branch and my representation that we've advanced the issue. So that might explain to hearing about the 2 years and 2 years why it has taken.
Okay, the AG has just walked in, but in fairness, I don't know that he was listening on his way here. These persons have a blockage of a road in Airy Hill, and their research, they've tried multiple ways, but as the MP was just saying, she put it on pause when she thought that they were going the legal route. They've now resolved it, and they've come back to her. She came to me about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I can't remember when, and I've indicated that it would either be resolved through, when I spoke to her, I just said the Ministry of Housing. You've now raised something that caused me to say the AG, but still on reflection, I think that the Ministry of Housing is the better route to go because the court system will take long. They went and checked the deeds and assert that the deeds show that they have no legal authority to block the road. Most of the services that government and the utility companies have put down are under that road, correct? And effectively, the blocking of the road means that the residents have to go around and walk an additional kilometer to do what they have to do and to get out. And it's predominantly children and elderly people or people working like the NAB workers, etc. A lot of Blind corners.
Blind corners, overgrown, narrow roads,
Okay.
deep drop-offs, and
In
people
other words-
flying.
Flooded areas, right?
Right.
Oh gosh.
In other words,
That is a whole other issue.
traveling an area that is inhospitable completely. So I still feel, and I will ask you to take a look at the deeds, I still feel that the first approach should be a conversation after a legal opinion from you, but that if that does not work, then we have to govern in the interest of the majority. And I'm not going to make any statement here other than the fact that I will ask the Minister of Housing, Minister or Parasec in Public Works, and the AG. The AG will be the legal work, but the two of them and Minister Duguid will be the physical visit with the MP to see what is possible. And I'll ask that this all be done in the next month. I know that it is an anxious moment for you, but I'd like you to share the deeds and whatever information you have with the AG next week and give him a week, 10 days to review, and that he can then decide what kind of conversation we have with you and the families to see whether there's an opportunity for mediation. Mediation is always the first option.
Okay.
If there is no opportunity for mediation, then we look at the other options available to us, but I will not govern from a desk in a school. I want my ministers and technical officers to go and see it firsthand and make their best recommendation. But I think I know what it is going to be listening to you. Okay?
Okay.
But thank you for expressing yourself as comprehensively as you have done.
Thank you.
And the second thing that I will say is that I assume that your muted message and the Deputy Prime Minister walked in on or about the same time was that the remaining kilometer continues to be inhospitable, and there is a pond, you said?
Well, there's a pond. She has a
pond
video she
that
wants to show
comes
you.
when the rain falls badly, and that people who want to walk can't get across, and they normally have to wait for somebody to come with a car and help them get across the area that is flooded,
At
correct?
this time of the year.
At the times of the year. It doesn't happen the whole year, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you
Please,
very much.
just show DPM. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. This is what makes this system work.
Good evening to the panel and residents of St. George. My name is Cyriline Austri, and I lived in Cottage Crescent, which is a development between the old Cottage Plantation and Grove's Corner. And to access our development, you need to go through Cottage Link Road. Our issue is that between the old Cottage Plantation and up to Grove's Corner, there are no lights. There are no sidewalks. So you will,
Let's slow again for me. From where to where?
okay, the old Cottage Plantation up to Grove's Corner. So my development, Cottage Crescent, is accessed through Cottage Link Road. There are no lights from Cottage Old Plantation right up to Grove's Corner, and from
This is outside of the development.
yeah, this is for us when we get
But
off the bus
in
to
the-
access our development.
No problem. Inside the development has street lights.
You have a long walk before you get to the start of the development. You have to go through Cottage Link Road, which is pitch black.
Okay.
It's a good 7-8 minutes walk
There's
before
a-
you get to the start of the development where the lights are.
There's a reason I'm asking, and it may be too late in this particular instance,
Yeah.
but it should have been a condition of the planning for the development of these housing areas. I am tired tired. And some of the worst examples are in St. Philip, where developments from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they didn't do the roads properly. They didn't put in proper lighting, a number of things that they should do. If you are profiting from selling property to people, then there's certain services that you should be putting in, because instead of relying on the government to do everything. Okay, but continue, ma'am. I think Minister Duguid
and
is
this
making
is
note.
an issue we were raising from like 2006, but the development is fully developed. There are people like me that use the bus, elderly and children that have to use the bus. We either have to get off at the old cottage plantation, or we have to go up to Grove Corner and walk back. It's safer to get off at the old cottage plantation.
So you're asking for street lights along that 7-8 minute walk?
I'm asking for street lights, or I'm asking for street lights, and I also have an issue with the actual road, the link road. When you leave the old cottage plantation to make the left turn into Cottage Link Road, it is so dark that you suddenly, and there's a bend, so you suddenly appear on the road. So you're driving and then you got to brake because you realize you fit the junction that you got to make the left. Also there is
You're saying is a danger.
It is, then all along there is very dangerous.
All right.
And that is where we also had the fatality on Sunday. That is where someone passed the car accident on Sunday. That's where we had the fatality. But we also have had accidents there in my time of living there, along that
The fatality
stretch.
was on the main or inside
Yeah,
the
on
link
the
road?
main, on the main, yeah.
Okay, what I'm hearing, Santi, you agree that we let Mr. Tudor go next week, your team, and report back. You got a week to report back.
Let him know what.
And report back to the MP, but report back to me as well and to your substantive minister. Okay? And I would appreciate when you go, if you link with the MP and Miss Austri, MP, so you'll arrange.
Madam Prime Minister, I was just asking what are we checking, because if we're checking for the street lights and so on, I don't want to be bombarded because...
No, this is not for the street lights
okay,
alone.
this is and signage
This is-
and
We need
everything.
signage. We need signage
only
urgently.
signage, hold on, not only signage, because
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that the corner might need it to be smoothed out. You understand? If not, there was no reason for me
Right.
to send Public Works up there. Lights are straightforward.
Yes.
You just need to put in the poles and Light and Power will deal with that. But what I'm hearing from you
Yes.
is that you may need to smooth out the blind corner.
Right,
And
exactly.
that you talked about cars coming wrong, but if somebody walking, and I would like to believe that people will walk on the other side of the road,
But you
by
can't
the same
because
token,
it's the same issue on
you're
both
gonna face
sides.
it. So, Mr. Tudor, look
Both
at it
sides.
and advise us, please. The other urgent area that came up last time that we have not started, and I'm putting it out front before somebody come again with it, is that 4-cross there by the same groves and thing that will take you to Sweet Bottom,
Right,
take you
yeah.
back down. That same 4-cross that really need a roundabout.
Yes.
Okay, and I think Santia, we had agreed that that would be in the CAF program. I think it was in the CAF program. You had checked it and told me when we were doing rubbing shoulders that it was the CAF program. But the left will carry you to Andrew's factory,
Yeah.
straight will carry you to Sweet Bottom, the other part will carry you to Groves and going up. You understand? And coming back down will carry you back down by me or Market Hill.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
A design was done for that for Cross Junction a few years back, about 5 or 6 years ago. It was done by the ministry. A draft cabinet paper was also done at the time and was sent to the Ministry of Housing for the determination of, as it relates to the land that was to be acquired. Nothing more has been done with that so far. We will have to more or less recall the file and see what status is at. But a design, as I said, has been done. Yes, ma'am. Oh, Lord, look at this.
But I want to tell you what I want to tell you on mic. Anyhow, rest assured, ma'am, Mr. Tudor, who is acting chief technical officer, will come with his team. He'll liaise with the MP and you, and they'll look and see whether there needs to be a smoothing out of the bend that will make the difference for visibility to ensure that nobody gets injured or,
Right.
God forbid, loses their life.
Yeah, and what I would also like to request is coming out of the Link Road, there's a pole right at the junction. I would like a stop sign put there so that people can know they have actually reached the junction. And over the other side, I would like 2 fluorescent arrows showing that they expect traffic from the top and expect traffic from the bottom. Okay?
I think both of those are reasonable requests and subject
for
to the
safety.
technical people confirming,
Yeah.
because they may have a better suggestion from their expertise than what you've put.
Yeah.
But subject to that, I would expect that not only that they visit, but that crop over Kadooment Day will not find this as an issue with the signs. And if the smoothing of the road has to take place, well, obviously, ma'am, that will take a little longer than a month.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, but the signs should be up, hopefully, before Kadooment Day.
Yes.
And the smoothing of the road will have to take a little longer.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Tudor, the 5-year file that's sitting down will be pulled again, and the people of Sweet Bottom, who we gave assurances to, that theirs is next, will also benefit. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Jonathan Cullimore. My name is Jonathan Cullimore. Cullimore. Yeah.
And you are from where?
Price Road, St. George. I would like to draw to your attention something that happened. I was being sent to a house for one of your agency to do a roof repair. I will not mention where the house is because I know Bajans. They can drive past it by tomorrow morning to see what it is and see what it looked like. When I get there and I step in the house, I almost cry. It's a house that built in the, I would say, the 18th century, where you don't use a beam. You send cross 2 pieces of wood, and then you pack some wet mortar. That's the type of area. Or 3, they go up through the house. I could have hugged the roofs, the roofs. I near cried. The galvanized in this house wasn't supported with any wooden structure. It was just rest like this here. Because, you know, if you put anything standing up, leaning against each other, it will stay up. The lava plastering from the older days, through that whole entire house, I would give you approximation measurement about, say, 25 feet by 20 feet. Ma'am, as I stand up here, right, I just don't want to get too emotional about it. Right? On top of the house, there's a dumpster growing. For that lady to get out of that house, in case of anything, she would have to walk a distance from here to the door. Now, I asked the lady, ma'am, who went? She said, well, some people went, and a very nice lady, you know. She talked to me pretty nice. And I said, what is they do? They come with papers and they write up. So I said, so they sent me to write up. I was so angry, ma'am. None disrespect. I called the agency next morning. I tell the lady, listen, you only want me to put on a roof, you want excavator. I couldn't believe in this. Look, listen, the amount of leaves that was in the house could have full about 6 plastic bags. The whole entire opening in the house is just like that. I could stand and look up in the roof. Look straight through.
So, Mr. Kalama, what you're telling me is that the house needs rebuilding?
Yeah.
That what you're really telling me?
I use the word excavator.
Yeah, that's what you're really telling me. But I can't tell you from in here.
Yeah.
So here's what's going to happen. See Senior Minister do get there. He can go with you, and he can go with the agency, and they're going to report back to me within a week, 10 days.
Well,
you understand? A week Monday, give me back a report, and let us see. The other thing you have to do is to make sure that the lady eligible. Once she is, then a problem. If she isn't, then she'll be eligible for partial as opposed to full.
She said to me that she tried to do, as most Bajans,
on her own.
As most Bajans trying, and I could tell you, with the price of building material, your government department will have to start going through this thing on a more pressing way because the price of material ain't easy.
But what I was trying to understand from you is the bad work that she had done. Was that done recently, or that was how the house was built?
That is work that was done all back in 18 somebody.
Oh, so in other words, she was a victim of poor construction.
Right.
And obviously the house ain't resilient enough to stand up to nothing.
You can't put on a roof on it.
I got you. No problem. Let's William, carry the agency and let's look at it and see what's the issue and have the social survey done on the lady so we can make a decision as well. Okay?
Yeah.
But I thank you. Last year you came and talked about enough things too, didn't you?
Yeah.
I remember.
Well, it's good to remember me. Because I can give you some things that to remember that although you speak about it, nobody pay you any attention. But, you know,
they ain't pay me no attention?
They ain't pay me no attention.
Oh, you or me?
Me. So when I tell you, you can get it done. Because I can explain it the most simplest way.
I was just about to tell you that if who didn't pay attention obviously got a lot to think about.
Well, there's some simple things, ma'am, that I realized that happen in your housing development. As I move around Barbados, every time some person move in a house, the washing machine outside cover down. Now, there's a simple way of solving that problem. Everybody after a certain time want this corridor area. That corridor area, instead of running the partition straight and put on doors, if you run the partition straight, that washing machine can be very valuable to you when you come home 2/3. You put the clothes, not go outside and pull off a piece of plastic from off the washing machine. Right through those development where you have the natural housing 20 by whatever. You're seeing it. And not only that, hurricanes getting stronger and it can make you miserable. I one time had to deal with a lady that was confined to a wheelchair. When I get to the bathroom, I said, listen, first you gotta get a van, you gotta get everything. You know what I tell them? Open up this bathroom, build the walls with 6-inch blocks, cover the bathroom with 5 inches of concrete, let the gable roof thing, if there's anything, push out the washing machine, and the family move in there. You ain't gonna wait. I tell them, listen, if this roof come off, concrete roof come off, when I look out, they show me the houses. Because with that type of modern day approach, families would not have to go into shelters because you already have your bunker there that would be much more resistible to hurricanes. All of a sudden, too, I realize everybody like to eat from the house. Let the engineers in here tell you what percentage, because of overhanging heat on the house, that the pressure that it will come on to to compare with a flush. If all the churches and all the houses down in Bank Hall have concrete roof in the patio, and then you have a normal roof. What we are doing, we are connecting the patio roof onto the main roof. That is wrong. Down there, bottom of District C police station, I submit, these people serious? You have...
You mean the ones that your last government do?
Listen,
Let me get this straight.
No.
Because
if you expose a house that is 20 feet in length, no, I realized it built recently. No, it built done recently. Bottom of this.
Which ones? Because
on the left, the one that hit roof. Yes, going down.
On the left from District C.
Yeah, when you come down the hill.
That done by the last government. Don't get tired.
Don't
get tired.
Well, that's ignorance.
But suffice it to say, I'm making a little sport just to get people attention. And that's how you sometimes got to get people attention. I want you to pause for a second and I want people to listen. Because that's why I talk too much about in the press conference this afternoon. If we don't take responsibility for how we building and for what has been built, we are going to be in trouble in this country. There is no part of the world that is being left out of this climate thing, this climate crisis. You spoke just now about overhang.
Yeah.
And we all know that there have been too many houses built in the last 50, 60 years with a 12-inch and a 8-inch overhang that you don't need. That overhang only give the wind somewhere to hook onto and to lift up the roof.
Ma'am, is a simple way.
And the truth is, I always grew up with my father telling us as children about the cowshed principle. That wind is coming from the east and God get out from the west.
Yeah.
And that is why a house that actually has the capacity, and that's why the older people used to use the hoods, the sash window, the wind blow through and come out on the other side, the gable roof intact. The rain ain't coming in because the hood blocking the rain from coming in. There was wisdom in how the people used to build before. And whether it was small chattel houses or large bungalows with a hip roof, there was wisdom in the use of the windows, the sash windows, the hoods, because look at here. If the rain start to come in here, you got to close up all these louvers. When in truth and in fact, look at any building built before 1960. And you see that they would have sash windows that could at least ease a little bit. And even long windows, instead of them coming across, they might just ease and bring an angle so you still get some breeze. 6 inches at the top, open, 6 inches at the bottom. You make sure that it is the right way so that the rain don't come in at the bottom. And you have little breeze and ventilation going through the house. Look at all the old chattel houses and see the fixed louvers in the roof. I like?
Yeah.
Study yourself.
Yeah,
the fixed louvers, a little window.
Yeah.
And you wonder, why then put that window up at the top there? Because the wind coming in and it going back out. So that there's no pressure building up to take the roof off.
I would like to explain that one. Science-wise.
Please, because I know you are an engineer in a way that I am not and will never be.
Once you have a roof and the sun hit on the sheets, the heat up in there, if you don't have those 2 windows, it will compresses the cool air and got it pretty miserable on the inside of the house. So those 2 windows, one side and one the next, as the hot air builds up in there, it would blow through and take out that air. Now, most of the houses now don't have that. So you have a sash window that is this length and air only coming in at this. So the hot air from up there is going to compress the cool air that comes through the window. I don't care what you do, you'll be hot.
In many instances, they're not using the hoods, so the rain can come full at you, and therefore you can ease the window a little bit to get a little ventilation. Now, here's what I want to do, because these sessions are only for style. And I have asked the Ministry of Public Affairs, Home Affairs with the Public Affairs people, to be able to do a series of short videos on many things. Agriculture now do theirs, showing Bajans how to plant again and what to do, because a lot of people, we assume that the knowledge getting passed from grandfather to father to child, it ain't happening in the same way. So we want these short videos. Instead of people looking at social media and laughing at people and things all the time, they need to also learn on the social media the things that can help them. I would like you and one or two others who are serious old-time builders and who understand how Bajans live to work with Senior Minister Duguid in order to be able to do some of these short videos and explain to people why we do what we do. If you do long video, nobody ain't gonna watch it. You understand? So you gotta compress what you're saying and explain to people why you got them windows up at the top. Now, I could get a fancy engineer to do it, but when a fancy engineer do it, he gonna want to talk in highfalutin language that the average household who building in a village or a community ain't gonna necessarily understand. So I want you to talk just as you talking, and to keep it simple and to break it down for the average household, so that Bajans understand that when we ask you to do these things now, it's not because we want to put pressure upon you, but because we want you to be able to live in your house and save your house. You want to know why blocks exist? The same hot air that he talking about. You living in a house and the house hot, hot, hot all the time. What you going to do, young man? Tell me, huh? You going to go where? Turn on the fan? And when the fan ain't working, what you going to do? Because the fan going to circulate hot air. You're going to go outside. You understand? And that is exactly why blocks develop. You ever see a block in the hot sun? A block always got trees or shelter or a little shed roof, because people gather where it is cool. And if it is not cool,
you see,
they're going to run from it.
Why you want people to take hurricane serious? When a hurricane force wind hit one side of a house, it creates a suction on the other side, which means it makes the pressure much easier for the structure to move. So don't care what you do, any measure at all to minimize the pressure on the house, you have to do it. Because I see and I know that although that you can have wall houses, as a guy tell me what happened in Grenada, I had to ask the gentleman 10 times what he mean. He tell me there was a way how engineers or whoever thread the steel through the center of the rafter. Now, because that it only want half of the wood to move, he tell me the wind take up the whole and lift it. So now what the engineers here are doing now, instead of going through the rafters, they go over, which makes sense. Anybody do anything different? Looking for problems.
So here's the deal. You're going to meet with Senior Minister Duguid. He's going to find an engineer or two as well, create a small little group, and you're going to come up with about 6 or 8 short videos for me. Coming out of the last occasion when we met in St. John, we went on the tour of Peg Farm, and then we went with the Rasta Brethren down behind Codrington and spent the day, and we also went to Borden's. Coming out of
but
that...
ma'am, before you go any further, those engineers will be paid, right?
My mama, I asked you for free work?
No, I'm trying to be short.
Why I asked you for free work?
No, I'm just trying to be short. They're doing it on a Sunday. No, they're doing it on a bank holiday.
My man, I ain't asking you for free work.
No, I just trying to make things clear. If it's free, tell me it's free.
I'm begging you that I don't have a lot of elbow room, so don't kill me.
No, I know, but if them being paid, I want to get paid too.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. That's why I said don't kill me. No, but all jokes aside, look, it's a service that Bajans need.
Yeah.
And it is my judgment that we need somebody to break it down for the ordinary household, like how you break it down.
No problem.
You understand? And once we can work together, you got to work with your civil engineers too, make sure that the advice is sound, for everybody, and we go down the road. All right?
No problem, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Kalima. All right? Take care.
Okay.
Who's next?
Good evening. Good evening, Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, senior officials of government ministries and departments. My name is Rodney Ford.
Where are you from?
I'm from Haggett Hall, St. Michael, but my parents are from Glebe. I'm speaking on their behalf.
Okay. Wait, they're here?
My mom is here.
Okay, just raise your hand, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure what I have to say, I'm going to also speaking on behalf of a lot of persons here. This is in relation to the freehold, the right to purchase
Sir,
land.
You're talking in and out the mic.
Yes,
And
my
I'm
apologies.
tired, so I'm not hearing as good as I normally
Okay,
hear.
no problem, ma'am. Try to position myself. Right, I'm going to refer to the Tenantries and Development Act, Chapter 239A. This will help me to get my point across. When a qualified tenant gives his landlord notice under this section, yeah, I've gone a bit too far, man. Section 4.1. This speaks to a tenant. Subsection 2, 3, 4 in this act, it speaks to the procedures, including the filling out of the form 1. This is relative to purchasing the land with the intention to buy. All right? Most persons have done this. On December 22nd, 2020, the Diocese of Barbados would have sent letters to some persons, and this is relative to the purchasing the land. And on December 22nd this year, this is going to be 3 years. I'm going to explain to you what the act speaks to. The act speaks to a time limit. It says that a person who is qualified tenant of a lot at the 9th of August 2001 and who has exercised the right conferred on him by this act shall complete the purchase of this lot within 5 years from the date of the receipt of the notice. It also says that the person who is qualified under this act for the 9th of August after has 3 years to exercise his right to purchase. Fail to exercise this right. Where a qualified tenant fails to, or refuses to complete the purchase of the freehold and lot which he is the tenant within the time specified at Section 10A, the right of the tenant to purchase ceases. This is simply saying, ma'am, that persons who would have received this letter on the 22nd day of December 2020 have 3 years to exercise their right to purchase this land. Some persons will have 5 years. Some persons will have 5 years, but a lot of persons will have 3 years. If this right is not exercised, a qualified tenant who purchases land and ceases to do so, the tenant has carried out a substantial improvement to the lot before the cessation of the right. The landlord may apply to the magistrate court under Section 7.6 for an increase in rent to reflect the improvement value of the current market rates of the property in accordance with this act. It's simply saying, right, that come December this year, if the conveyances are not finished, the diocesan, who are the vendors for this land, have that right.
I hear you, but I want to assure you that the church to which I belong is not an immoral institution. I have every confidence that even though they have taken their time, that they will not seek to exert on you an improper right. That time has expired, not due to anything that you have done or not done, but due to their failure to act with dispatch. Now, if it were ever to happen, that is why the Minister of Housing and the Attorney General are also empowered with the ability to correct wrong things. But I have every confidence that even before you raised it, from what the two MPs in St. George have raised with them, that they will take the appropriate action and not seek to deny any tenant the right to purchase because of the expiry of the 3-year period. But I want to thank you for being civic-minded enough to do the research under the Tenantries Development Act at Chapter 239. And even though the legislation is a little convoluted, as the AG will explain, to suggest to you that I have every confidence. I'm not sure if he's a member of the Anglican Church, but I am. And I have every confidence that the church to which I belong will not take advantage of people when they are the ones who have not proceeded under the law. AG?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ford. I went to school with a Rodney Ford, but that was a little bit older than you, I suspect, at St. George's Boys' School. I'm happy that you took the time out to look at the legislation. That's always a heartening thing. But I want to suggest that you interpreted it in the way that I would recommend it be interpreted. You see, when the Act, Section B says where the qualified tenant fails or refuses, the law will interpret that as being a failure on the part of your mother. Okay? So fails or refuses puts the burden on your mother, and it is really saying where through your fault you do not complete, then you lose the right to purchase. But what you're describing is a situation where the Anglican diocese has been dilatory. They're the ones who have not put things in place so that your mother, who I take it is more than willing to complete, correct?
Of course.
Using your resources and your effort.
Of course.
That's what a good son should do. So based on what you've described, there's been no failing on the part of your mother. So the Anglican Church will not be allowed to pray in aid this provision, which seeks to, and it's important provision because under the old law, a qualified tenant had a right to purchase forever and ever, amen. And it would stake out a landlord for 30, 40 years. This was intended to bring some order to the situation, but what you're describing, in my view, does not present a peril or any disadvantage to your mother. So nothing that you've described to me or to the panel would indicate that there's any failing on her part, and therefore I don't think you need to worry. But I'm happy you drew it to our attention. I believe that there's some things that can be done to get the Anglican Church to get on board.
Well, I'm going to go a little further.
The minister will update us because he has met with the church on this matter recently. Please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Sir, you just got some free. You didn't have to pay for that advice. But on a serious note, we met with the diocesan trustees this week, I think it was Tuesday, the permanent secretary, the chief housing planner, myself, and a few of the other persons within the technical team. And we know what is happening. You have some 128 tenants in St. George Glebe, and 116 persons have submitted the Form 1, which is indicating the interest to purchase the lots. Thus far, only 26 conveyances have been completed. There are 5 sections, and I don't want to get into the details. Section A, Section B, Section C, F. The only section that has not been surveyed is Section D, which is the section north of the post office. And that will be done in the month of July. Needless to say, there have been some technical difficulties, and I too want to thank the diocesan trustees for coming forward and explaining to us what those challenges were. But I can say to you without a shadow of a doubt, we have a way forward, and this year, within this financial year, you should be having your asset that you can leverage, either to the bank or wherever you want to. Anything else, Prime Minister? I don't think this.
No, I really want to thank you and the MP for St. George North, who has now indicated she wants to say something. But this issue has been unresolved for too long. The 2 MPs, and it so happens that this MP is also Minister of Housing, are doing their best to make sure, and the instructions that the Cabinet has given them, not just for St. George. That's why the lands where the government is renting to people like Welch and St. John, that we have indicated, let the surveys be done and let us transfer. Minister Griffith is here, and your letters have gone out to the people in Welch too, haven't they? And people have started to buy. People started to purchase and get the conveyance, because the government is not interested in Bajans being tenants. We are interested in Bajans being owners. And we as a government have therefore put the money in wherever we have to do the surveys, because you can't convey a plot that has not been surveyed. And mercifully, we have been able to do it. The church has a number of glebe properties, and they are now trying to do it. So I want to thank the 2 MPs for sitting on top of this and making sure that we will not go into another term with issues like this unresolved for the 128 of you in St. George. General Sec?
I just wanted to say on that note, the matter that you raised, Mr. Ford, and the AG explained it quite well, is if your mother refuses or failed, that's where the problem would be. So I just thought that I would use this opportunity again to say to people, fill out the forms, complete the forms so that you can get the whole process towards purchase the Form 1s on the way. I think that the minister, it would be useful for the Minister of Housing to point out of the lots surveyed so far, how many people have actually come forward to indicate, because you said most people, but that, I don't think that's the information that 116 out of 128. And how far is the process? Completed. Okay. Okay, So that's the updated information from Tuesday, because we really need people, if you have the opportunity, don't turn down a good opportunity to become an owner.
Two things I would like to say before you go.
What they're clearly saying, 26 have finished. First of all, there are 12 households that need to go and fill out the Form 1s. I would like to urge the MPs to find out which those 12 are and go after them, and if there's an issue, because they may just need somebody to talk them through to fill out the form. But the bigger issue is that if you've only had 47 responding to the diocesan trustees and 26 completed, that means that is 73. which means that there are 27 plus the 28 is what? 55. Okay? 55 people who have now, of which 12 have not started. So 43 people have to come forward and get their things finished, and the other 12 need to start the Form 1. Okay? But we need, and the minister has met with the church, he understands what their delays have been. We've put some alternatives to them, and we hope that they will respond so that you will not have to worry about any time period, not even if the law is not saying what you think it says. Okay?
Yes, please. But just 2 points before we go. Like you, I do have faith in the church. I grew up at St. George Church. I've been in church there for years. My point here is to simply highlight that possible loophole to ensure that there's no wrongdoing. Not by the church.
Yeah.
Not by the church.
But by the tenant. And
Not
that
by the
means
church.
a public service announcement to people, letting them know, because in this instance it is the church, but in many instances the landlord is private. And therefore people need to know that they have a defined period within which to act when certain circumstances are done. So Dwight, you can make sure that there are PSAs to that effect too. Go ahead, sir.
And my final point is in relation to the same issue. Since December, the blame is being, I understand what you're saying, Minister Sutherland. Since December last year, I would have spoke to the attorney at law. And he is saying, this is something that I guess you can check it out, that he's waiting on the Barbados Revenue Authority to issue land tax numbers to those lots, the conveyance with my mom's name and dad's name since December last year.
I will check on that for you, William. Can you follow up and find out from Revenue Authority? 'Cause I know people, just like people like to call the name Miaka is 3 letters, they like to call the word bra because it's easy and it's 3 letters too.
And I think that's the case.
You double check that for me and find out what would be the difficulty in the allocation of any numbers there too. Okay? And I would imagine that between the Chief Surveyor and Bra should be able to give you the answer, William. Okay? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
ma'am.
very much, Rodney.
Okay.
All
You're
the
welcome.
best. Thank you, Mom.
Good evening, Madam PM and members of the head table and all other officials. Paul Bentham, Newbury St. George. My issues are not necessarily parochial. I come, well, to represent a concern in relation to education reform and the attendant consequences of the lack of. I applaud the government for pressing ahead with the recent pronouncements and action. We just concluded the common entrance a few days ago, and I note that there is still some delay in determining when that will cease. And while, plans are afoot and works are happening, and I think the consequence of what has transpired in education and the fallout, I would say, at certain levels, particularly those schools where there are clusters of underachievers. I think there's a correlation between what is taking place in terms of law and order and some of the systemic issues in relation to education. And I really do believe that we have to, there's some issues that we have to wrestle to the ground as it relates to, determining the way forward. And as a person who's worked in the justice system for 20 years and then actually in prison for a couple of years working there, and now in the school, I think I've had an opportunity to gauge some of the challenges that we wrestle with. And as a probation officer, I come across lots of persons who you know, at one point would have wrestled with issues of being law-abiding, and they find their way. But I think at this stage, there are a number of our young people who are drawn into that net, and unfortunately, they either end when their life ends, or at some other point when they're no longer physically able to engage in you know, deviant lifestyle. So I think my substantive issue relates to those clusters of underachievers being fed into certain schools, and which essentially have become, what should I call them? Places where negative behaviors are reinforced. And the best efforts of teachers, and I applaud teachers, I celebrate many of them who give up their best, but there is that front loading of issues that are not necessarily resolved as people make their way through the 6 years or whatever they spend in secondary school. And I think that it's important that we you know, address this issue. The whole question of law enforcement, I mean, we have some issues that I believe we have to deal with, and it's no secret that, you know, things are happening that make us uncomfortable. So I think there's a correlation between what happens in our schools and the outcome of.
I'd like to encourage you to write a few points and send them to the chief, because you have a unique perspective that many don't have. Having worked in the criminal justice system, the penal system, and now the educational system. And I think that it is a perspective worth sharing. A lot of us think we know, but you have actually been there and seen across the board. I must tell you, and I want Minister of Education and Chief to commend the chairman and members of this board and the principal and management and leadership, teachers. When I walked into this school this evening and I saw the condition of the school and how it looked, I felt so pleasantly refreshed. And Santia, I know that you had a hand in this before handing over to K2, and it goes, you remember I spent money on bathrooms, and people want to know why the government was giving money for schools for these bathrooms. And we have now given you, Minister, money to do exactly this in the other secondary schools. Our children must feel that they're going into something special when they're going to school. And if I got to work 20 hours a day to find a way to make sure it happens with every primary and every secondary school in the next 2 years, we're going to do it. I've asked the Ministry of Education to launch a landscaping competition. It needs to be launched as soon as the school term closes, and why? Because it is not just about the teachers and the students, it is going to be about the community. So you see people here in Constant and all around here in the Glebe and Charo Bridge and everything, you have 2 schools that you will have responsibility for. And in every community, they got people who got green thumbs, and they got people who want to be active and do things. And I want these committees populated over the summer vacation, so that when school opens back in September, they will already have started looking at how they can put it together. The truth is that I would like to have a best kept school at primary and at secondary that the Prime Minister has the ability to offer an award, a reward,
nice.
Award, whatever the ministry recommends, but something substantive. It is less about the money. There will be some money, obviously, because it takes money to do things too. But remember how we used to have the competitions every Independence for the community gardens? Well, I want the same thing done across the school system,
Yeah.
primary and secondary. The ministry has already been working with my office to do the promos and the jingles, and we will have a charitable fundraising to make sure that as the government spends money to do the other things, that people who want to add value will make sure that every school is an oasis. Every school is somewhere where people can find beauty and serenity. And it is within our capacity in the next 2 years to make it happen across all, 60 little bit primary schools. How much we got now? 68 primary schools, and how many secondary? 21, because Alma Parish didn't start back yet. That'd be 22. All right. And then we will have the others. We have agreed that we will build 2 new secondary schools come what may, regardless of where the education reform takes us. So that the bottom line is, I really feel we can do it. You saw what difference those signs out there made in them bright colors. You saw what a difference that mural made. You see what a difference the colors in here. How many times we've come into this school, the ceiling never looked so good, the fans never look so good, the walls never look so good, the stage never looks so good. For real. Outside, and then you got the little agricultural thing that they're doing in the school too that enhances the quality of the environment. So please submit and let us move forward, and the ministry will do what it has to do with the rest of schools. But
Yes.
I want all Bajans across every community. If you got a green thumb and you feel that you can make a difference, when the ministry starts to advertise for what school you want to work with on a landscaping committee, and then if there are too many people who come forward, we just call a little group meeting and see who really want to do it and who can stay. And because it takes the effort of cooperation between you and the students and the teachers and whoever else interested in the school. We're not putting this as an additional burden on teachers, but there are some teachers who too have a green thumb and want to do it.
Right.
So you're not going to exclude them if they want to do it. And there are groundsmen and school meal servers who also got a green thumb,
Yeah.
and they may want to do it too. But the key is our schools must be places of beauty and serenity if our children are to learn.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I wanted to do this when I was Minister of Education. I couldn't get the chance. And the other thing that I wanted to do, and I'm begging them to do it for me. You see the fences? I tired spending money as Minister of Finance to fix a fence that broke down. I keep saying that in this climate as well, one plant that flourishes what? Bougainvillea. In the dryness. I never seen a body run through Bougainvillea yet. I never seen a body run through Pittosporum yet.
Right.
And if you have a simple form, and the Minister of Environment is here, and I've said NCC must work with the schools, but if you have a simple format that you want to keep people from running in, and you want to make sure the people inside don't run out. So put the Pittosporum on the inside so that nobody don't get prickles when they run into the Pittosporum, and put the Bougainvillea on the outside so that when they're trying to run in, they can get the prickles and think twice about coming into the school. You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm not telling you take down fences where they exist, leave them, but don't come asking the Ministry of Finance every month for money for fences when you can use a nature-based solution that is prettier and that is better for the environment. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I commend that initiative in terms of school competition, and I'm sure the MP for St. Joseph's will be happy, the school, which I'm attached, to know that we have a jump start in terms of making our compound beautiful. And finally, the whole question of community activism, I think that's important, and the communities and schools working together. We cannot build a civil society that is functioning unless there is that work between the communities and the schools and people just like me who live in communities. We have to get involved in mentoring our young people, working with them, guiding them. We can't just sit by and say young people, are bad. We have to get involved. So I urge all of us, this is our community, this is where we live in St. George North, and we need to get involved in I look forward to the advent of the government's proposal for people parliaments.
People's Assemblies.
People's Assemblies.
We're waiting on the framework to come to get the legislative drafting done. And obviously it's taken a little more time than I thought, because we also have had to put some other priorities there with respect to drafting. And the AG will tell you that it's perhaps one of the most pressured departments in government, the drafting department. Okay?
Thanks for listening.
It's coming though. Thank you. Who's next?
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, other members of government. I'm back here again. My name is Alan Haynes. I reside at Cleveland, St. George, and I'm the president of the Barbados Kidney Association. I have a very, very short question to be followed by a few comments. That question is, what is the status of the proposed legislation to harvest organs? This is now July of this year, and we have not heard anything.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
AG, I think you're in a position to respond to that now.
Mr. Haynes, I'm happy to say to you that the legislation, the drafting of the legislation has been completed. It has been returned to the Ministry of Health, and the next step from there will be for the Ministry of Health to seek the final approval of Cabinet, after which it will be laid and debated in Parliament. So at this point in time, there are no impediments to that bill being laid in Parliament and debated. And I believe that I'm quite sure that we reminded the Minister of Health that all of that drafting work is completed. So the ball is in the Ministry of Health's court now, but I anticipate that we should be able to get it to Parliament within the next couple of weeks. It shouldn't take long. All of it is drafted.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I've certified it. When the Attorney General certifies it, it means that it is as good as it could be. Not necessarily perfect, but as good as it could be, and ready for Cabinet's final approval and for laying in Parliament. So I think that we're on the cusp of completing that very important work. And I remember that you spoke with us about it when you were here last year, and I made sure that we checked on it, anticipating that you might be here again to inquire of its status.
Yeah. Well, I just have a few comments. Sorry, Prime Minister.
That once it comes to Parliament, this is the kind of legislation that is likely to go to select committee for broader consultation. And I say that because I've had cause to repeat. There was a lot of commentary on the child justice and the child protection legislation without people realizing that the laying in Parliament is only part of the process to start the consultation process with that. And similarly, the bill that goes to Parliament will go to select committee so that you can come, and ironically, your MP is the chair of the Social and Environment Committee of Parliament. And even when Parliament is on recess, that committee is expected to start working. In fact, I think it was to have had its first meeting today, yesterday, and because of the national mourning yesterday, it was put off the meeting. But I would imagine that they will start very shortly, and I feel a little thing because they're getting more pressure than the other two committees at the moment. But with the grace of God, I'm sure we will get through all. And what I'd like to suggest to Barbadians, where possible, yes, you can come and give evidence, but where possible, and you can write, because it will allow us to get through the process quicker and be more efficient. And I feel your concern, because you and a number of other people that I know would like to believe that they can get, and I can tell you straight that if something happened to me tomorrow, I am brain dead, make sure I want to take every organ in my body and give it to somebody who needs it. I ain't even joking, because there is no sense in letting my organs go down in the earth with me
To become dirt.
when I can be of use to somebody else who wants life. You know what I'm saying? If I braid dead, you can't get the braid. If I braid dead, you can't get it.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah.
No, but all jokes aside, it is a conversation that families, and you will get all views on this. There will be some people who will say, no way. But there are a number of families in this country that will say, I want to make if I get in an accident or if I am brain dead, because there are different ways in which you can harvest, that they would want to make sure that a Barbadian who needs a better quality of life can be given it, even if I can't be given life, and go forward. Please.
Yes. And I just want to make a few comments here. As president of the Barbados Kidney Association and also the kidney stakeholders across Barbados, the Barbados Kidney Association stands ready to assist the Ministry of Health in trying to change the hearts and minds of people of Barbados as we try to embark on this revolutionary piece of legislation. We have a number of panel discussions that we had recently that were held by local, regional, and international speakers that we stand ready to chair. We also had interviews with transplant recipients and donors, which we can also share. We have passed it on to the GIS, because we believe that this has to change the hearts and minds of Barbadians if this legislation is going to be successful. But just passing the legislation alone will not achieve the results. Has the potential to be a major transplant center being. This will result in significant savings, foreign exchange earnings affecting the hotel and tourism industry in a very, very positive way. I believe it's one of the few areas that we have competitive advantages. We don't have the many aging areas, but I think it's one of the few areas that we do have a significant competitive advantage, and we should pursue it as vigorously as possible. Thank you.
And don't move, sir. I want to help you.
Yeah.
Because the first African American, and they call it African American because that's how they call black people in America, but she was Bajan.
Yes.
Is Bajan.
Yes.
And it is Dr. Vilma Scantlebury.
Yes.
And those who have not read about her should go on the internet and Google her. Sometimes Google is a lot of foolishness, but they will tell her the true story, tell you the true story, and what she believed in life, not to let obstacles bring her down, but to see them as challenges that she can overcome. She has done over 2,000 transplants.
Yes,
over 2,000 kidney transplants.
Yes.
She has published over 86 papers, peer-reviewed.
Yes, ma'am.
She is recognized and applauded in the US, but do not get, she is from Barbados.
Yes.
You understand? So when you are talking, we need to remind people how many thousands of, tens of thousands have benefited. But in our own part, we have raised somebody who helped bring life to many. No reason why we should not be changing our legislation, respecting the ethics that need to be respected and doing what needs to be done.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it is enabling, it is not mandatory, it is enabling for people. And I say that because I know how easy it is to twist words from people in today's world. So thank you, Mr. Haynes, and I'll certainly let the Minister of Health know that you are also offering that the Barbados Kidney Association is willing to be part and parcel of the public education process. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
But in this particular instance, it's kidneys, but one day it might be a heart.
Yeah.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good night, Madam Prime Minister. No, I don't. I'm standing. No, I'm standing for someone from St. George North.
No, let the person come.
No, ma'am. No, they cannot attain, and they ask me. No, I must. I must be allowed to speak, Madam Prime.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
Madam
sorry.
Prime Minister,
So
the person.
I am
Madam
sorry.
Prime Minister, the person
I
cannot
am
come,
sorry.
And all they're
am
offering is
sorry.
a thank you for an operation done.
That's all right. I am sorry.
Ma'am,
hold on.
no,
Principles
they're asking.
only mean something when it is inconvenient to stand by
ma'am,
them.
they cannot
If
attain.
the person
They definitely
can't
cannot
attend,
attain.
then let
They
them
just
send a
asked
letter.
Me, they just told me to
Send the letter, and I would have let you read the letter.
Ma'am, they say to thank you. They just say to thank you.
Next person. Thank you.
Madam Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm told
Attorney
that
General.
Roy is prepared to let you whisper in his ear. So you can go, no problem, you can go and tell him again, sweet nothings. Let's go.
Yes, good night to everyone. I have just two. My name is Alonzo Gill.
And where are you from?
I'm from Cleveland, St. George.
Yes, sir.
And I have just two issues that I would like some clarification on. I listened carefully to an earlier speaker who spoke on the Tenantry Freehold Act, Chapter 239A. But at the same time, and like you, ma'am, who I refer to as our mother of the Republic, I am aware that the Constitution is ground normed. And it speaks quite clearly in relation to time limits and so on. At the same time, bearing in mind that I know that the Constitution is ground norm, I'm having from you the assurance that persons waiting to have their conveyances need not worry. And they also clarify that against the background that the Constitution is ground norm. Not that I'm, yes?
The AG clarified it, and the truth is that the minister has spoken to me, and without getting into the details of the diocesan trustees' business, suffice it to say that we are satisfied that things will happen.
Right.
Okay?
I was particularly careful not to mention the word trustees.
Yeah. So.
My second
Thanks.
issue, ma'am, I move on to my second issue. I move on to my second issue since I'm sure that everyone understands fully that they have the assurance that they need not worry about what is written in the Constitution, the ground norm. My second issue, ma'am, and I gear myself with a recent case. The decision was made as recent as November the 1st, 2022. I am not going to call any names because I think I'm wise enough, but I have the case here, and I want to read not only for the persons in my constituency, but wherever they are in Barbados, who is dependent on the Tenantry Freehold Act. The disposal, ma'am, where the learned honorable judge of the High Court, he made a decision, and
Who was the judge again?
I was particularly careful not to call names,
No, I
ma'am.
know, but it's a public document, so you can.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So it's Justice who?
Justice Barry L. Carrington. And I want to read
And the name of the case?
the name of the case, and I can make this a document for you, if you so desire.
You sound like you want to be in another place. But what's the case?
I will read the case, ma'am. Is Pinder against Pyle.
Pinder versus Pyle.
That's
Thank you.
right, yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
And I would want to read, just for the benefit of all Barbadians who are depending on the Tenantry Freehold Act. And I know full well that they can go and look at Hazard to understand what was the intention at the then time. But I can read what the learned judge concluded. He said, the option to purchase land under the Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act was personal to the third defendant's deceased grandmother as a qualified tenant, and consequently cannot devolve on her estate. So, if I understand it correctly, ma'am, it means that if a person qualifies as a tenant and that person dies, then her descendants, they step right in the face, man, of the law of succession. Her descendants do not have the right to purchase the property. This is in this document. If I understand it correctly, please clarify it for me, ma'am.
I can't clarify what I've not read, and I won't. But what I will do is that I give you the assurance that between the Attorney General and the Minister of Housing, that I will ask them to review the judgment, and I will ask, because we can't appeal a matter that we are not a party to, but we can make a determination as to what we feel the intention of Parliament was then, but more importantly, what it ought to be today. And my understanding, as I said, of that legislation was that the then Prime Minister, Tom Adams, wanted to make sure that families who, by dint of their presence on the land for considerable periods of time, although he used a short period in the legislation, 5 years, but the philosophy was that people were forced to live on this rab land as slaves, as ex-slaves when you had the located laborers, the Master and Servant Act, that if you wanted to keep living on the land, if you wanted, you had then to sell your labor to the plantation. And the motivation of Tom Adams and the then Barbados Labour Party government was to make wrong things right. I tell people the world over that when I ask for reparations on behalf of the Caribbean and on behalf of Barbados, we do not do so with fingers pointing only at you. And that outside of Cuba, this country has undertaken the most ambitious and comprehensive land reform that is the envy of many, many, many other countries across the world. Indeed, when President Cardoso was leaving, coming close to the end of his presidency in Brazil, and Owen Arthur was Prime Minister, President Cardoso asked for information because they have never been able to do right by the ex-slaves' descendants in Brazil. and they felt that this was a worthy example to follow, because what we did was to give people the price of land for less than the price of a pair of sneakers, in recognition that this was a form of reparatory justice. And that in the case of plantations, it still is, 40 years later, plus, at 10 cents Barbados a square foot. 5,000 square feet at 10 Barbados cents is $500. And I got a lot of people who buy sneakers for more than 250 US or 500 Barbados in our country. But you can still get a whole piece of land. And it therefore meant that the motivation was that you could use the savings to be able to put towards the improvement of the house. And that because you had access to the land at such a cheap price, that you could also go to the credit union or the bank and borrow against the land as security in order to move from a chattel house that needed repairs to a bigger chattel house that repaired, or a wall house. And that is why, you remember the song that Gabby Scott from the Union had? It was Gabby Scott, who in building wall in front, building wall behind. Huh? Remember that song from the early 70s? Huh? But I use his thing to tell you that. But all jokes aside, it has made the difference to our development in this country. And that is why I argue that Tom Adams, if he did nothing else as Prime Minister, what he did for tens of thousands of Barbadians across the rural landscape of this country was unbelievable in anchoring them to be stakeholders and shareholders in the democracy that we have. We, when Owen Arthur became Prime Minister, recognized that plantation tenantries were not the only tenantries, and that the non-plantation tenantries and urban tenantries had a different characteristic. Whereas in plantation tenantries, it was the plantation owner that Tom asked to carry the subsidy, because the plantation invariably had much, much more land. And your forebears worked that land for them for decades and centuries. The ones in town and the ones in the non-plantation tenantries like Bourne's Village, the difference was that people came to town, and it is small people who own the land. So a person might have had a half acre or an acre, and to tell the friend or the family in St. Andrew, that's why almost all of St. Andrew people, all of Jackson come from St. Andrew, virtually. I ain't talking about New Jackson Terrace, I'm talking about the tenantry. All of Skeets Road, in my constituency, virtually all of them come from St. Joseph. Now explain to me how two areas so close to each other, and almost everybody in Skeets Road come from St. Joseph, up by Udale, and almost everybody in Jackson Tenantry come from St. Andrew. Because when one came to town, they would send back and tell the rest, or somebody else who said, I won't come to town, they would say, well, I got a little piece of land here, come and put a house spot on it and move. So what Owen did, and I know because Glenn Clark and I had two tenantries that were being affected, and I telling this for the record for who come after, because you never know when I can't talk. Lower Estate Tenantry and Allen Land in Bush Hall, 1990, 1991. Both landlords called for $5 a square foot. Can you imagine what $5 a square foot was to tenants 32 years ago? It was a barrel of money. And we, as an opposition then, came out And it was under Henry that we announced it, and owing to his credit, followed through on it. And that is when we introduced the concept of urban tenantries and the compensation on urban tenantries and non-plantation tenantries. And we recognized that we couldn't put the price at 10 cents a square foot because there was a higher commercial value to urban tenantries, obviously, nearer to the commercial center, the port, whatever. And we understood that we couldn't ask the landlord to carry the subsidy in the way that the plantation owner, as an act of reparatory justice, would carry the subsidy. What we did, therefore, was to say that government would pay the difference between what you, the tenant, pay, which is $2.50 Barbados cents, and what the landlord was asking for. When we first introduced it, the price of the land at the time in the late 1990s, $7.50 per square foot, was more than enough to carry it with a cap of 5,000 square feet. If you had 7,000 square feet, the other two at you, fully. 5,000 square feet, you pay $2.50. The landlord gets his full $7.50, the government pays the $5. We then raised it to $15 deal before we left government back in 2007. There are at least 4,000 people across urban Barbados. Regrettably, the last government didn't believe in the program and didn't do anything. And we have started it back. I had to pause it during the pandemic for obvious reasons, but we started it back full steam ahead because that is what makes people shareholders in this democracy called Barbados, when they own land and when they're not here just as tenants. So I've taken the time tonight to explain it because Bajans must understand, and I find that as a country we take too much for granted now, and it is not a good thing. And there's a culture of contentment that has kicked in that sometimes causes us to feel that we're entitled to everything. But we have worked hard to give citizens in this nation, for the most part across parties, to give citizens in this nation a stakeholding in the democracy. And that stakeholding is best exemplified when there is ownership of land. The government of Barbados has tried to reverse the scars of history through the provision of free education, through the provision of, for the most part, free health care. It is not where we would like it to be because of the technology, but we are getting there, and we have a whole plan to roll out soon. And through the enhancement of property rights that were the subject of major land reform. Tell me where else in the Americas you could go and get land at 10 cents a square foot, 5 US cents a square foot, and build a house on it. Tell me where else in the Americas you could get urban land for $1.25 per square foot and the government pay the difference for you. I thank you for raising these issues. What I will give you the assurance is, and I said all of that perhaps to let you know philosophically, without prejudice to the right of cabinet to vote me down, where philosophically I stand on this. Because the other thing that Tom Adams did for us was to make sure that there were two areas of investment for ordinary Bajans. One was transport licenses, bus licenses, PSVs, and minibuses, because you were supposed to be able to treat that license as a property right and devolve it to your children and grandchildren. And the second one was to reserve the selling of food as long as possible to local people without having the chains like McDonald's and all of them that eventually with the WTO came in, but we were able to stave it off for as long as possible to the point where we developed our own fast food restaurants and we were able to create brands that other countries have not been able to do, not just at the level of Chefette or Barbecue Barn, but also at the level of people like Bellyful and all the rest selling all about the place on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. Okay? So it is important that we understand what informed the policy, and I thank you, therefore, for raising these issues. But the AG will look at the judgment, the Minister of Housing will look at the policy, and the Cabinet will settle whether this is something that needs a further amendment or not in the legislation to move forward. Thank you, my dear.
For your patient listening, ma'am.
Thank you. Go ahead. I was just dealing with the history of it, so.
So Mr. Gilley, you'll appreciate that the government, no, you can say, no, you don't need to stand back up. The government was not a party to that case. That's a case between private individuals. And of course, I said the government was not a party to that case. That's a case between private individuals. And therefore, they argued the case as they each saw fit. I don't know that I personally agree with the decision, but I haven't read it. But I do know that in this Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act, in my view, there's a very important clause, and it says that in interpreting or in applying this act, you must give it such fair and liberal interpretation so as to make sure that the ends of the legislation would be met. Now, I've been in Parliament now for, well, the Senate for 5 years, the House of Assembly for 20. And I think I have a very good idea of what was behind this. There's an illogic to saying that where a person who is a qualified tenant dies, that their estate cannot purchase the property. There are individuals who have invested many thousands of dollars in building a house, some wall, some wooden wall, some all wood, and it would present a tremendous hardship for those individuals to be told that they have to dismantle a house worth $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, reduce it to nothingness, and move it and carry it someplace else. I do not believe.
AG, you song as though you can be an ally of mine in the cabinet.
Well, I figure that all attorneys general must be the Prime Minister's ally.
Not quite. Because there are times where you will put me in my place with the law. But all jokes aside, yes.
And remember one final thing. The Constitution, you referred to it as the grand norm, a wonderful German word that we don't hear too regular. Sort of like when I talked about the curtilage, and it got introduced to their vocabulary. Our Constitution says that Parliament's responsibility is to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of a country. A judge has the unfettered right to decide what he feels about a given case and what he thinks, whether he thinks a law is constitutional or unconstitutional or whatever it is. That's his right. It's the independence of the judiciary that we're...
Up and there is nothing. It is at the same stage since 2021. And we would have some persons in the neighborhood who have received
let me check on it for you. So, Mr. Morris, we'll check and we'll get back to you, all right?
Okay.
So, I don't know why, because as you've worked out, some others have received.
Yes.
Okay?
And as
that's the $3,000 one, right?
No, this would have been the 14, the one that the amount is 14.
14, okay,
yes.
No problem.
Because along with being a first-time homeowner, I'm also a first-time mom. And this will really help go a long way.
All right, right there.
Thank you.
I see the face smelling. Boy or girl?
Boy, he's there.
Boy? Or is the one making noise?
Yeah, behind here, keeping up.
It's his right to do so.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. He's making noise because he see you away from him. Thanks. Who's next?
Madam Prime Minister, members of the head table, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ronald Ashley. I'm from Allerton. I want to speak about an environmental matter. About 2-3 years ago, this government had decided that they would have cleaned up the gullies, develop them and identify them. I am not sure if that program is still in place or if it has ceased. we in St. George have a number of gullies. We have gullies in Workmans, in Jordans, in Draxall, in Ariel. All over St. George, you have gullies. And I see the gullies as a very important part of our environment. St. George, throughout the years, have not been known for any major tourism investment. And I'm saying that if we are concentrating on ecotourism and community tourism, the amount of gullies we have in St. George, we can develop them and we can have some interesting tourist attractions. We don't only have gullies, we have caves also. And some of these gullies just not only in St. George, but the border other neighboring constituencies.
Can I ask you, Mr. Lashley, to go? Minister Ford is here. He is an enthusiast, not just the minister. And I have him working on a gullies project as well with St. Peter. And in my constituency, Jackson Gully, I'm hoping to see that he would do something for me when I'm busy doing other things, but I didn't see it yet. But no, the paper he tells us is soon coming. Come, Adrian.
Hi, sir. I really want to thank you because I ditto every single thing you said just now. The gullies is a major part of our ecosystem restoration and our plans to have answers to combat the vagaries that we face. It is an oasis for biodiversity. You have heard me talk about biodiversity non-stop from the time we became minister and the importance of having that restored. It is a green hub for carbon dioxide sequestration. You know the whole story. And as you said, it can now become part of our touristic drive. So we have, and I wouldn't want to speak before this, the paper goes before cabinet, but of course there is a plan to have the resuscitation of the gully and the habitats across Barbados. So not only St. Peter and St. Michael and all the other areas that you know that the gullies exist, but St. George as well. So I will have the conversation with you, and therefore we can sit down and discuss all the ideas that you have, but there is definitely a plan in place over the next couple of weeks to have a project which is going to redevelop and refocus the whole interest on our gullies as part of a land-based solution to combat those vagaries that we know as climate change and natural disasters. Thank you.
In addition to the gullies in St. George, I was saying that St. George reflects beautiful valleys and nice hills. I think we can consider looking at a tourism project for St. George. We are right in a position where we can have some good ecotourism in St. George. An inland hotel, you know, we have a lot of history in St. George. The history of the plantations, Draxall plantation, with a lot of history. These Buckley plantation, Buckley factory, these things can be developed into tourist attraction. So I'm asking that consideration be given to such, right? And make St. George. I always discussing things with the MP. Right? So these are ideas I have that I just throwing out. So that's my position for the night. Thank you.
Just trying to say you're making good points and we're on the same wavelength.
Thank you. We are on the same page always.
That's why you discussed it. Who's next, please?
Good night, everybody. Good night, Madam President, Madam Prime Minister, sorry. My name is Misha Knight. Misha Knight. I live in the St. George South area in Daniels Land, St. George. I would have spoken to Minister Sutherland previously around the end of last year concerning Daniels Land. It's about a stone's throw away from Fairview Plantation. So I live through a carrot road. It's about 5 houses through the carrot road. The road has deteriorated over the years to the point where I can't walk through the gap properly. If the rain falls, I can't walk through the gap at all. If a car comes through the gap, the bottom of the vehicle is scraping. We have 3 street lights, only one work.
We've been waiting on the equipment to do the short roads program that you've heard me speak about. And in fact, when you told me today in Cabinet, end of July, some in July and some in October. So I believe that we can start some of the roads. The intention is for us to have equipment packages such that 2 depots can share an equipment package. And I would like to ask, obviously we are prioritizing them, Mr. Tudor, but have a look at the road, and if the road is as bad as Ms. Knight is saying, clearly there is that, and there's still 1 or 2 from last year, which was the one with the lady with the eggs.
Flavor 6 Rock Hall, Constant.
Rock Hall. So Rock Hall is one of the ones that is very, very bad as well. But a lot of these are short roads, and in many instances, they have good foundation. So that it just requires the equipment going in, Mr. Tudor. You want to speak to it? And a lot of these short roads?
I was asking for at least a temporary fix, even if you just
Assistant
put in a little. No, I was asking for a temporary fix.
A temporary fix?
So y'all get to it, even if you're just putting some of the Mills
Well,
Road.
Yeah, they may have to come and send somebody to just
put in
take
some
down
of
the
the
rock.
milling.
But Mr. Tudor, same way you're going to see Miss Austin and the street signs, use the opportunity to let the other MP carry across there and see it. And do not forget that you told the lady, what's her name again, in Rock Hall, she is waiting on you and me. Okay?
I can speak to that.
Right. Do not keep her waiting much longer.
Right. All right, we finished off. We have about 10 roads, what we call the community access roads that we have started. We just finished Best Tenetry Road in Newbury today. We will be starting Rock Hall Tenetry on Monday. We are also going to be doing Mayfield Tenetry right after we finish Rock Hall. We have other roads like Ruth King Road, Sargent Road, Crawford Road. We have about, like I said, about 10 roads to be done in the St. George area. We finally got the 3 Bobcats that'll be the plan to use for this program. So we hope to be able to speed up this work sometime between next week or week after next. We got 3 Bobcats, a backhoe, and some trucks. So we plan to intensify this community access road program within the next week or 2. But like I said, there are about 10 roads in St. George we plan to do under this program. And if there are any other roads that the ministers want done, we can add them to the list as well. But there are about 6. Huh? But in all, for the program, we have about between 60 and 65 roads throughout the entire island that we want to do using this. Now, the program basically consists of using mill stuff that was taken off of the airport runway, and we store that, and we're going to use that back. Basically, it's like recycling asphalt. So it's going to be not that much not too significant a program to be done because we're using that material that was previously used. Basically, it just involves putting down the mill material, penetrating it with what we call oil or asphalt emulsion, and rolling it. Simple process. Pardon me? And some sand, yeah. Minister here was just telling me sand seal it. We was planning to sand seal it. So when it is done, there'll be hardly any difference between that and hot mix road in the way it looks.
Is this, that a lot of these short tenantry roads, the government determined, and it came out of this Parish Speaks program, and that's why I will defend this program to the hilt, that separate from the big roads and the other longer subsidiary roads that the ministry is doing, we as a government have decided that we will invest in the equipment to allow the depot workers to be able to do these short roads. Mr. Tudor, I'm holding you to a low bar because we should be able, based on the timelines you and Mr. Eversley gave me when we went out initially, that we should be able to get with the 6 packages no less than 250 roads island-wide for the year. And the truth is that based on what they told me, that just means 50 roads per package, 50, 60 roads per package, this is 50-something. And the truth is that you must be able to do more than 50-something short roads in 250 days a year if we take into account the 52 weeks times 5 minus a few bank holidays. You understand where we're going? And that we want to put these short roads, these short tenantry roads, behind us in the next 5 to 7 years. Barbados should not have any of this. And I've asked the Deputy Prime Minister to lead this effort so that we can put it in our history, and that this notion of people having to walk out with 2 bags, a handbag and then a bag with shoes, so that you change your shoes when you get to the front road and then come back, got to be a thing of the past. So
A simple thing
the
is
government
carrying out
is
the
choosing
garbage.
to spend the money, part of it, and I believe, I'm told that there is a MOU to be signed tomorrow between UCAL, which, as you know, is the enfranchisement arm that came out of the Transport Board, and the Ministry of Public Works. And why? UCAL is predominantly a company whose shareholders are mechanics. And we in the government have said, look, the government has not been the best steward of equipment. Too often when we go, Mr. Tudor telling me, that piece of equipment break down, that piece of equipment not working, we waiting for a part for this piece of equipment. So it's no problem. The best bodies to take care of equipment is who? I can't hear you. Mechanics. And therefore, if the mechanics can own the equipment and lease it to me, when they lease it to me, I know the equipment working.
Makes sense.
When I lease it, I pay them. When I pay them, they can pay me back for the equipment over time. You understand where we're going with it? So that what Santia and Tony have done, ministry and UCAL, is agree that we are going to let UCAL hold the equipment, as we said in our manifesto, and make sure that they are properly paid, because over the years, the government went into a period of time under the last government where they were owed over $22 million, and where they only had labor-only contracts. So they still had to turn around and wait for Transport Board to buy the piece of the part or whatever that was needed to fix the equipment. They said, no, come out of that. UCAL, this belongs to you, pay me back for the equipment because you can't get it for free. You buy the equipment and service the equipment as you see fit. You get your overdraft from the bank and do what you got to do. You set your rates. Mr. Tudor will agree with you, the rates at MTW. If it works well with them, the next bodies we going for is out by Adrian and the other heavy equipment in government. And that way the government is paying for equipment that is working all of the time. Now, if we got to lend UCAL some money to buy equipment, we can do that too, because UCAL belong to ordinary Bajans. UCAL in like Courtesy or what's the new one? Inchcape, or honor them that got their own corporate thing. UCAL is the former mechanics at Transport Board who came together in good faith under Owen Arthur and Sir Roy Trotman and formed that company. We have a duty to make it work. And this government is going to make it. And I thank Santia and Tony for putting us in a position where that MOU can be signed tomorrow. The next stage then is for Mr. Tudor and them to settle out the rates and the actual transfer of the pieces of equipment, and the AG will make sure that the bills of sale are in place to protect the government's interests with respect to the security and financial arrangements that are put in place. So all of that is to give the public the story on the back of your request for a road. So I apologize to you.
No problem.
But the road coming, that's the point.
I just want to add to that, in terms of the decision of which roads we're going to be doing, typically these roads are between 100 and 150 meters long, which is between, let's say, 300 feet and 500 feet, say, right? Now, we did Edgecliff in St. John. That took three weeks to do. And we just finished Best Road in Newbury. That took 3 weeks to do. So typically, these roads can each be completed.
Obviously, there's a need for increased productivity because that was nowhere close to what you and Mr. Eversley said is the estimate. So something gone wrong, and I would like you now to review and tell me why you are now taking 3 times the time that you and Mr. Eversley told us. The minister tells me, take care that you don't feel that I am somebody who you want to whisper sweet nothings into my ear. But I know you know me better than that.
Yeah, but the problem is when I told you that it was in the dry season, we're in the wet season now, so it can take longer. Right?
I would prefer to see the work before the excuses.
Yes, ma'am.
The Lord bless you. But the equipment is coming. That's the short line. If you don't make sport in some of these meetings, after a long day of work, you will drop down. So excuse me for making a little sport with Mr. Tudor, who I can make sport with.
My other issue that my 15-year-old son just brought to my attention as we were waiting. My 15-year-old son. Yes. There's a need for a basketball court at the Greens facility. Every other new facility that has been built in the last couple of years.
I hear you, but on new basketball courts or sporting facilities, there will be a list because, as you can imagine, every community in Barbados wants sporting things. But what I will say to you is that this is something we've been using the tool of planning gains, and the minister will note that if there's any development going up in that area, that we put the basketball court at Greens as a potential planning gain for you to do with any major developments in St. George South. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
And the lesson in that is that there's more than one way to get things achieved in government. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Prime Minister and ministers at the head table. I am Tessa Chatterton Shaw, and first of all, I just want to welcome you back home, Prime Minister. I watched attentively tonight, or this evening, the press conference, and had I not listened from the beginning to end, I would not have known about Parish Speaks. I don't know, maybe I'm not on social media as much, but I thank you for this opportunity. Allow me, please. I am a St. George girl and a St. Thomas girl. So allow me, please, to address a few issues. I am what they would call from Charo Bridge. You know, the Bridge supermarket, Salters, but I live in St. Thomas. What is interesting in it?
And therefore, I will have to ask you to hold tight. So
all right,
and I will be prepared to speak to you off mic. But we have taken a very clear decision that people who live in St. George are the ones that we will take, or in the parish of the night. So I have no problem with speaking to you on another occasion, but I'm going to hold a line because no, we've done it to other people in other environments. So, and including tonight. So unless
can I just address then?
No. There are no
exceptions.
There are no exceptions.
No, I want to talk about
But there's no exception because we let somebody from St. George speak. So
no,
but who lives in St. George?
My 86.
Madam, if I gave that, I would tell you that I'm from X and come from Y and I'm from Z, and then it becomes a free for all. So just hold tight with me. Let us maintain some discipline, and we will get it done another time.
But when?
Rest assured.
But when?
You will. You will. You will. Either of these people from St. George will speak to you.
Good night, Prime Minister, and good night to everyone here in the meeting. I've always heard when something nice is being done, you must always comment. My name is Janelle Holder. I am from the Todd St. George community, which is in the St. George South constituency. So as I was saying, this is the first time I've actually had to come out to the meetings. I have heard my mom speaking about them, and I want to thank you and your team for this opportunity for the members of St. George South and St. George North, to come out and have their say at these sessions. Tonight, I am not speaking on my own behalf. I speak on behalf of my mom and my uncle, two senior citizens. The first issue with the report regard to Transport Board. With respect to the TAP program. Okay. So it was reported to me that in some situations when our senior citizens are riding the TAP buses, that they are sometimes being told that persons are not accepting the Barbados ID card to show that they are pensioners, and they're being asked to pay the bus fare. The TAP program is supposed to also accept the ID card just like the Transport Board buses, but they're asking pensioners to pay the bus fare.
But they can't, because they're also being allowed, you're paying them for the pensioners. So that is wrong. Please give us the bus number and let the ministry deal with them. And if they continue to do it after they've been reported, then they may find themselves out of the program. 3 strikes and you're out. Santia?
I agree. I think you need to report it to Transport Board. Let us know what is happening, and we will investigate it.
Okay, well, right now I don't have the numbers because of that, my mom does not take the bus anymore unless it is a Transport Board bus. Right. Because she's like, her pension ain't enough to pay a bus fare and still maintain
foolishness. That is wickedness on the part of people, and I will ask the DPM to get the Transport Board to have a meeting. Fabian, you're here? Have a meeting with all of the TAP holders, because I know that you come to the Ministry of Finance for money to pay them. And they pay for school children and for elderly and for police. You understand? So I thank you for raising it and bringing it to our attention. Fabian?
Thank you, PM. Long day to everybody else. The truth of the matter is, and I always speak very frankly, this has been reported to the board. The board is aware that this is happening in certain pockets of the network. We have met with the TAP owners and identified and explained to them this cannot happen, this cannot obtain. We have had scenarios where TAP operators would have cussed old people, and we would have had the evidence, and we would have put those operators out of our system. Notwithstanding the fact that the legal relationship is between the owner and the board, we would have taken action against the individual operator and also warned the owner. Or, as the Prime Minister said, it is a Transport Board bus. I always say in the board, a bus is a bus is a bus, whether it's a TAP bus, whether it's a Marco Polo, whether it's an electric bus. And all persons on the bus are expected to be treated with respect and treated the same way. So as soon as we receive those reports, we would normally investigate. When we find out and substantiate, we take action. And I cannot stand here in front of the whole country and pretend that this is not happening. It is the truth. It's happening. It's not wide across the entire system, but we have received some reports and we are dealing with it. You can call us at 535-3500, or you can call my direct number at 3510, and we will deal with it from there. But I am really sorry about the experience that your mom had and all the other senior citizens and everyone else had to endure this kind of behavior, because the government has spent a lot of money in this program, a lot of investment in this program, and has tried to meet all the demands of the owners over the last couple of months especially. So it is really disheartening to hear these stories with the amount of effort that we are putting into trying to make this work. So I'm really sorry that happened to your mom.
I will convey your apologies to her. Thank you.
I suggest that you do some PSAs letting the public know that whether it is a transport board bus or a TAP bus, that senior citizens are entitled, and the other categories for which we have. And part and parcel of what you have done is to put the cashless system in place yet? Almost there? When will it be finished? Okay, so in a little bit, the cashless system will also allow us to appropriately audit and pay them properly for all of the senior citizens. So there's no excuse for them not taking the senior citizens' ID card.
And just to add that we are up to date on the payments, because I know some will say that this has been created as a result of some of the non-payments. We've finally got that regularized and the payments are up to date. So just to let you know that.
Okay, I think it's a wonderful program for enfranchisement of former transport board workers, but by the same token, fair is fair is fair is fair. And you cannot take advantage, particularly of senior citizens, and make them pay when you're going to also be able to claim against the government for that particular senior citizen, and that would be double pay. Can't work. Not both here. And I notice that others like that phrase now too. Go ahead.
Okay, still at the transport board. Well, I guess this is more the ministry and not transport board directly. The bus service, and I can only speak with regards to the Bowmanston bus service which travels in our area. There seems to be a real, I want to choose my words wisely, but I generally drive. There was a week where I had to take the bus because my car was at the mechanic. I had to leave home at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that was because there's a guy who works with the TAP program in my community, and that's the time he starts his shift, and he would take down persons in the area. So my work starts at 8. I leave home at 6 in the morning to guarantee that I will be at work on time. And then on evenings, if I don't get the 5 o'clock van to get home, they ain't like getting home until outside is so dark. The service is really terrible. This week alone, I've had to, my son's girlfriend, she was working a night shift. She has to get work for 10. You're looking for 8 o'clock bus, there's none. And even if I decide to take her to the next community, which is St. Jude's, or even Four Roses and St. John, it's the same situation. There is no bus.
You're complaining for Todd's in St. George.
Bowmanston Road.
Bowmanston Road.
Yes, please.
Okay. So, no problem. So, Fabian, please, let us see.
But I do understand that we
You're
are
getting
limited.
more buses soon.
Correct.
You're getting 10 buses next month. 10 electric, and that would be 5 long and 5 short. 5 long and 5 short. And then we hope to also have another set after that, but I won't speak to that yet. Okay? So suffice it to say that even in all that we're doing, we're increasing the bus fleet, but in the interim also, the reality is that the last government increased the number of private holders of PSV licenses from about just 375 to over 750, which effectively privatized the transport system in this country. The problem is that we need to have the mass transit authority, because in many instances, many of them don't necessarily want to fulfill the universal obligations, which means wrong the service. That's why transport board exists in the first place, because a private sector person will work when they want to, how they want to. And we're saying, no, it can't work that way. That if you're in the transport system, you have to be subject to the directions of a regulatory authority, both in terms of location as well as in terms of hours of service. Okay? So we're working through all of that in a way, hopefully, that will be fair to them, but fair to the traveling public as well. Okay? Thank you.
Now, my next area, Fabian, I'm finished with you. You're free to go. My next area, Minister Sutherland, housing. I Again, I like to give praises where praises are due. The work the government has done since the passing of Hurricane Elsa to assist a lot of the homeowners is indeed greatly appreciated. And I do think that they need a round of applause for that. In our community, there were several persons affected, and right at this moment, I believe most of them are completed. There is one tonight who I come to speak on their behalf. He is 80 years old, pensioner, and he has visual issues. His house has been started, but there's been a standstill now. Actually, there was a delay first in getting the house started. It's finally started, and then there's a delay again with the house. It's at the point of what they will call the ground sill. The floor hasn't been poured or anything as yet. And I made a plea tonight to have this matter dealt with for him as soon as possible,
Don't give me his name publicly. Just let Dwight have it. Mr. Gill is here too. Mr. Armstrong is here. I'm not sure whether it's NHC or RDC, but suffice it to say that we're really trying to push to have all those houses completed. Both Dwight and William are saying it's NHC. So Mr. Gill and Dwight are here. Speak to them and let's get this gentleman sorted out. Okay, but thank you. And the truth is, look, we've had to start from and literally to do that which most governments have not had to do with the level of damage that we faced in both the freak storm and Hurricane Elsa. And that's why the debt pause clauses are important going forward, because if we can have those natural disaster clauses, it will make a difference to give me elbow room to really help Bajans. It will free up, in our case, if we really get hit, the equivalent of about $1.9 billion over a 2-year period, okay? So, believe you me. But we are clarifying the rules now, and we really need also to look at how best Bajans can ensure for house fires and for storms, etc. But we recognize that if the crisis gets worse, insurance also is going to be more and more difficult and more expensive. So that's why this issue is not a straightforward issue, and that's why you see us having to argue and put positions overseas as we have been doing. Okay? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. And Mr. Sutherland, my son sent me a message to you. Recreational side, the road tennis court, they're still awaiting that. Thank you very much.
He should manage that one. Any more people, or that's it for tonight? Thank you. Roy, please, I think you wanted to speak to us quickly.
Good night again. The lady who just spoke, I didn't catch her name. Would you please go over to the table on the far end and speak to Alex so that they can have it on the log for follow-up purposes? Yes, okay. Those of you who were here earlier would understand why. What we are doing essentially with each of these is that we log the information first for order in terms of how we run the meetings at night, but then every person who participates, we actually follow up so that we can have proper information, and that when we come back to report in a year from now, that there is actual progress and there's record of that progress. All right? And talking about progress and record, there are two things we're going to do in a moment, but while we cue the video from the Ministry of Transport, I just want to let you know, when Saitonia was trying to make the point and the Prime Minister made it clear that she's not from St. George, there was one person from St. George who is well known, both locally and nationally, Sonia Banfield, a former national netballer. She reported last year on her problems in requiring hip replacement. She couldn't even stand up to speak for the duration of the presentation. What she wanted to do was to say to Prime Minister and the MPs and the others from health that she has in fact been able to have that hip replacement, or a knee replacement. And as a result, she is recovering, not enough to be here tonight, but she wanted to say thanks. So I'm saying it on her behalf. And also, for your attention, the Ministry of Transport and Works, they take a lot of licks at these meetings, but they do get things done, even if they don't do it for me in St. Andrew. Here's the presentation.
From minor repairs to complete reconstruction, the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources has been improving road infrastructure within St. George.
The depot, which is responsible for all works that goes on in St. George, is the Golden Ridge Depot. Once we have work that is spread out over the dual constituencies, we would obviously look at it, assess it, and see wherever necessary to respond to the needs and the queries of all residents.
At Harmony Cottage, the road was laced with crocodile cracks, potholes, and cross pipes that Waterworks had to come and amend, move, transfer to allow our milling team to mill the road, set a level and a grade, and fully pave it with the paving team belonging to the Ministry of Transport and Works.
East Lane Hill, that was rehabilitated. That road was needed to be done for years now. So we recently got that mill and resurfaced there about in May.
The most notable project was the reconstruction of Carmichael Road. The entire road was raised due to saturation within the St. George Valley. Utility companies upgraded their facilities at the site, wells were cleaned and recased, and earthen drains were constructed to improve drainage. A road shoulder was added to create pedestrian and bicycle access.
Before, when you were coming from Jordan Tenantry area to make the turn to go back to Workman's, people could not make the turn comfortable. So we decided to cut the rock bluff that was there, thereby widening the junction there, that people can make a smooth turn. So that's basically what that was, to improve that area, that stretch of road. And we are presently waiting to get the road shoulder repaved. From there, we did a number of traffic improvements along the lines of bridge posts at the same Jordans, and we did some at Boys Mill Plantation, where there's a 20, 30-foot drop behind there. So we installed some there to slow down traffic at least from running over.
And we have also covered a well that was open existing of 100 feet. We also erected bridge posts at Carmichael Junction, St. George.
We've also improved junctions with traffic markings, we've painted bridge poles, we've reconstructed roads. So here in St. George, there is certainly work in progress, and we look forward to certainly making the residents and Barbados who will traverse this district feel comfortable traversing this road in a safe manner.
The Drainage Division continues to clean drains and watercourses within the parish. Residents are reminded to dispose of garbage, old appliances, and plant debris in bins or at the appropriate landfill, as dumping in drains and watercourses obstruct water flow and cause flooding. MTWW will continue to improve road infrastructure and drainage within St. George.
One, also, for your information, one of the issues raised last time we were here related to garbage cans. There were some residents who were concerned that they didn't get. Subsequently, though, the ministry has pointed out that they have gotten a full, Minister, do you want to speak to it? A full supply of garbage cans, and they are being distributed.
Just to say that after our initial rollout, which is the residential rollout, garbage rollout system, we had about 6,775 persons who did not get cans for various reasons. And unfortunately, so too. But just to say the ministry, working with ProSource, we have acquired about 10,000 garbage cans. So the distribution is supposed to, well, it commenced. It started on the 17th of this month. And I want to say that it will be for a period of 6 weeks or so to finish off. And every single person in Barbados who is entitled to a garbage can will get those beautiful cans. And I want you all to treat them with the level of respect that they deserve. Please, I beg you.
And that program includes 92 properties in Sweet Vale that didn't get before that have now received, a total of 105 roll-out carts and 105 recycling bins in that process. So you can look out for the distribution continuing. That brings us to the end of St. George Speaks. Our next stop will be in St. Philip, and that is in July, which starts shortly. I suspect we may go early, Prime Minister, with St. Philip, because there is going, once we get into the start of crop over around the final week and a half of July, I'm not sure any one of you will want to be sitting in an auditorium listening to us when there's tents and so many other things to do. So we will do St. Philip next month, but it'll probably be, pardon? In July next month, right? Yeah. But it will probably be earlier than normal.
Yeah, not at the end, not at the end of the month, because the end of the month is now a bank holiday on the 31st of July for the 50th anniversary
and
of
lots
CARICOM.
of things. So unless there's something else Prime Minister wants to say or the MPs, thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your participation, and see you again soon.